I'm next in line to, go be strip searched, get whatever, my uniform, and be sent to jail. And then I'm told it's my lucky day. I'm free to go.
Welcome back to the Lackluster channel. Thanks to a good friend of the channel, today we have the Internal Affairs interview with Bethany Guerrero, the officer that drew her service weapon on a viewer named Ryan. If you're unclear of what this is in regards to, I have 2 prior videos showing the interaction and after effects that you can check out in the description and pinned comment.
You are being questioned as a subject in an official investigation. The complainant is Chief Quinn Shannon. This investigation concerns alleged violations of Policy 4211, response to resistance, 2312-2, conduct, 2312-3, conduct unbecoming, 231614, using coarse or profane language to any citizen. The specific allegations are Officer Guerrero violated these policies in her handling of case 23-2514, which was a call received on May 9th of 2023. The evidence consists of 911 calls, radio traffic, footage from Sable Ridge Pool Clubhouse and parking lot, VWC footage from Officer Guerrero, Ayala, Carter, Stairs, Strzelecki, Valerio, and Walker. Before I get to any questions, I just want to put on this here, your body cam footage from the response to this call. And again, just at the start, we're talking about 23-25-14, which was on May 9th, 2023.
Yes.
I'm making contact on the other side of the pool, just let me know.
Come in, how you doing? Keep your hands out your pockets for me?
I'm not the one who's done.
Sir, keep your hands out of your pockets. Put the phone
I
down.
haven't done a crime. Don't talk to me like
Listen
that.
to me, I don't know you.
Listen,
You can put
I
that
don't
down.
know you. You're the one with the gun. Why?
Get down on the ground now. Get
What
down
the
on the
fuck
ground.
is this?
Get down on the ground.
What the
Because
fuck?
I told you not
That's
to reach for anything.
I haven't committed a crime. You don't have any.
Hands out to your
I
side
haven't
now.
committed a crime.
Now you can put your hands behind your back.
You can't hit people for what?
Yes, I can.
For what?
I don't know you.
I don't know you. You're the ones with guns.
I'm detaining you right
That's
now.
fine. You're detaining me for what crime?
Because you don't want to listen.
That's not a crime. You're fucked. Are your body cams on?
Yes, they sure are.
Good. I called you guys for help because this guy's brandishing a gun at me.
Sit down. Sit down. I didn't say get up. I said sit down.
Who the fuck is this? Where's your supervisor?
I'm getting
Do you
one.
see how she's talking? I haven't done anything.
You don't
Why am
wanna
I in
listen.
handcuffs? I don't care. You're not my mom.
Because I'm
You're not
coming
my
here
dad.
for a gun.
That's fine. I don't have a gun. I haven't committed a crime.
And when I told you to keep your hands out of your pockets,
You're
you
not
did it.
I didn't commit a crime. You don't get to tell me what to do.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. Why are you yelling at me?
Because I have every
Who
right to
are
right
you?
now.
What's your badge number?
321 Guerrero, Guerri. Make sure you spell it right.
If you're this scared of a guy in a
Scared, I've been here
swimsuit,
for 20 years.
you're terrified of a guy in a swimsuit. I didn't do anything.
You can shut your mouth now.
They just detained me. I explained. There's no guns. That guy
I don't
has a gun.
detain anybody for no reason.
Then what reason?
Because I
What
told you
crime
to
did I commit for
Can
you
you
to detain
shut your
me?
mouth so I can explain it to
Are
you?
you in charge of this lady? Who's the
I'll go ahead and stop this here.
Why am I in handcuffs on the ground?
All right, so regarding this call, you remember getting dispatched to the call.
I do, as a backup.
Very initial broadcast said, implying there was no weapon, but that was quickly after changed, and they mentioned that there was a gun involved. Dispatch said that the individual that was armed was a CCW holder and had the gun holstered in his waist. The second caller, which eventually turned out to be Mr. Gould, said the subject with the gun pulled up his shirt and revealed that the gun was in his belt, and he was described as 5'2" and 120 pounds. Now, when you arrived, you recall Mr. Gould was wearing a bathing suit and Crocs.
When I arrived, I remember seeing, yes, a male wearing multicolored shorts. And as I was pulling in, I could see him, and then as he was walking towards me, he was now to my left as I'm starting to pull around. And just behind him, by where the stop curb was, I noticed a lump. I wasn't sure what it was at a time. If it was a shirt, if it was a backpack, if it was a towel, I wasn't sure. And the radio traffic was very confusing. I wasn't sure at first because as one of the last things I'm looking at just prior to my arrival, I see, which I highlighted here in the notes, that the caller's been advised to show his hands at all times to the officer and keep his hands away from his groin area. So it became known to me later on down the road that there were actually three people. The three people that eventually were involved were all calling 911 at the same time, and each were speaking to a different dispatcher. I was unaware at that point how long Officer Valerio had even been there, because Officer Strzelecki was dispatched as the primary, and I was dispatched shortly thereafter as his backup. And when we were pulling into the parking lot is when I noticed Valerio's truck. So the last radio traffic I remember hearing was just 14, I'm 10-12 on the other side. I wasn't sure who he was 10-12 with. As far as I know, I'm arriving to a scene where I am not sure if we have a gun secured yet. And that was my understanding, arriving there, that I don't know where this gun is, because I never heard I have the gun secured, I have, so when I'm getting out of the car, I don't even respond to Valerio because I'm not sure who he's speaking of yet. And as I'm pulling up and putting the car in the park, I'm still looking at him over the hood of Valerio's car as I get out. And I remember exiting just before Strzelecki because I saw Mr. Gould walking up. And at that time, my advantage point was I'm still trying to look over the hood of the car. And as I'm looking over the hood of the car, I could see the hands initially drop, which prompted me to say, hey, get your hands out of your pocket. At that time, I'm now moving around to the front side of Valerio's truck, still trying to maintain some position of cover, at which point he dropped his hands again to pull out what was a phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you tell him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Correct.
Keep your hands out your pockets for me.
And it's about 3 seconds after that he takes his phone out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, you're still advancing towards him.
Correct.
And he makes no attempt after that to reach back into his pockets.
I'm not the one with the gun.
Sir, keep your hands out of your pockets. Put the
Relax.
phone
I
down.
haven't done a crime. Don't talk to me like that.
Listen to me. I don't know you.
Listen,
you can put
I
that
don't
down.
know you. You're the one with the gun. Why
Get down on the ground now. Get down on the
What
ground.
is this?
He has his phone in his hand,
He has his phone in his hand,
out to his side.
out to his side. He at that point was listening to my commands, but then once I had gotten him handcuffed, he's still verbally resisting because he immediately went to stand back up.
Right, okay,
And I needed him
but
seated.
before we get to him being handcuffed, so you order him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Yes.
He takes his hand, takes his phone out. He's holding it to his side.
He didn't listen to the first command.
Okay. From that point to the time you drew your gun on, it's 8 seconds.
Okay.
In that 8 seconds, he did not reach for his pockets. You didn't give him any additional commands.
I told him at least twice to keep his hands out of his pockets after the initial drop, which, again, I saw from as I was pulling up. I could see this. He dropped his hands, and as I'm getting out, I got out rather quickly because of the initial hand drop, which is why I greeted him with, hey, man, kid, keep your hands out of your pockets, because I saw that pulling up.
Right.
And again, I don't know who this person is yet. I had no idea who anybody was. My job at that point is to keep everybody safe, including him.
So when you initially greet him, you gave him an order to keep his hands from his pockets.
Yes.
One time.
One time. And then
3 seconds later, he takes his phone out.
he goes back into his pockets to
Right.
retrieve the phone, at which point I said, hey, I told you to keep your hands out of your pockets, and I drew down on him because, again, I don't know where this gun is at.
Okay, but so we have 8 seconds in between when he took his phone out of his pocket and when you drew down on him.
Okay.
And in those 8 seconds, the phone was out of his pocket. He made no other attempt to go back into his pocket. Right?
From my vantage point, I saw his hands drop. I don't know what else he's going for. I don't know.
When did you see his hands drop?
So, from my vantage point, before I even got out of the car, I saw this. I saw both hands disappear, which prompted me to say what I initially said to him.
Right.
And then, as he disobeys that command and goes back into his pocket again and pulls out the phone, he's now saying to me, well, I'm not the one with the gun. I don't know you. I don't know who anybody is at this point. I'm trying to secure a scene.
Right.
That's my focus at that point. And it's never easy when you know that there is a gun out there. That is the knowledge and mindset that I had at that moment. There is a gun unsecured, because I did not know any other information as far as what Officer Valerio, who he talked to, who was actually the suspect. And I'm still keeping an eye on what that object was over there. I don't know if he's going to try to run back to that. I don't know.
Right.
I just have to get
But he
him
didn't
on
give
the
you any
ground.
indication that he was going to run for that or make any.
I didn't give him
that.
enough time to do that, though.
Right. Because after he took his phone out of his pockets, 8 seconds later, you drew your gun at him and ordered him to the ground.
I did.
So you agree, though, that from the time he took his phone out of his pocket, he didn't defy your commands after that. He didn't make an attempt to reach back into his pockets.
I was attempting to control the scene to make it safe and get him secured.
Okay. It was your belief that he could have been armed.
He could have been, yes.
And you felt that he wasn't following your commands. So you felt the need to draw your weapon.
Correct.
You walked past a patrol car on your way towards Mr. Gould.
That was Valerio's truck, I
Right.
believe, yes.
Didn't consider to use that as cover if you thought Mr. Gould was armed.
Well, I did initially. I was hanging out towards the front of that portion of the truck. You know, that was my initial approach. And then once I was able to draw down and continue to advance, once I had this here and he got down on the ground and I was able to handcuff him. But I didn't readily move from that area. Yes, I'm getting out of the car. I'm not sitting there when someone's trying to walk up on me. I don't know who you are yet, because I had no clue that this guy was a victim, potential victim. I had no idea.
At the time.
At the time.
But throughout that initial 11 seconds or so interaction, you continued to walk towards him. You advanced towards him the entire time.
Right, because he's on the ground. I can see
Right.
where his hands are, and then I reholster.
Not
so
when
that
he's on
I
the
can-
ground. Not when he's on the ground. From the time you get out of your car to the time you made physical contact with him and handcuffed him, you advanced towards him the entire time.
Okay.
So there was no pause behind cover. There was no using a vehicle for cover. That's what I'm asking. You felt that he was armed and posed a threat that you needed to escalate to deadly force, but you walked past a vehicle where you had an opportunity to get cover. But you didn't, correct?
I mean, yeah, but again, like I said, in my mindset at the time, like that's nerve-wracking. That's uncomfortable. I'm trying to do the best that I can at that point to make a scene secure. You know, I'm not saying that the last thing I'm thinking about is cover, but I'm trying to prevent an incident or potential incident.
Now, you handcuffed him, Mr. Gould.
I did.
At any time, because it's not clearly visible on video, was he searched?
At that time, no.
Okay, why not?
Again, I was still trying to maintain some type of control because he was so verbally aggressive. I understand he was handcuffed at that time. However, he was attempting to stand up and I needed him seated. He was considerably taller than me, and at that point I needed him sitting on the ground. I don't know why his initial reaction was to want to get up or verbalize to me, I'm going to stand up. No, I'm still trying to take control of my situation.
All right, so he was laying on the ground, and he was handcuffed.
Correct. And I rolled him over.
And you rolled him over, and you instructed him to sit up.
To sit up.
Sit up. I understand that he obviously didn't, for whatever reason, whether it was intentional or misunderstanding, he just went to stand up.
Right, and I said, have a seat on
Right.
the ground.
I called you guys for help because this guy's brandishing a gun at me.
Sit down. I didn't say get up. I said sit down.
Who is this? Where's your supervisor?
I'm getting
You see
one.
how she's talking to me? I haven't done anything.
But you said that he was trying to get up. You didn't search him because you're trying to control him. But he wasn't trying to get up until you rolled him over and told him to sit up.
Right, so he was listening to that command, but, you know, like, I needed him rolled over. I no longer wanted him on his stomach. I needed him to sit up. Okay. I don't know this person. I don't know if he's taken something before, if there could be drugs or alcohol on board. It wouldn't be out of the realm with, you know, individuals we have to deal with. And in my mind, I'm trying to just go through the best checklist I can under the stress that I was put under at that time to try to make a scene safe.
Okay. What I'm trying to understand, though, is you felt that he posed a threat to you. There's a gun involved in the call. You don't know that he's the one with the gun or not. You draw your weapon on him and order him to the ground because there's a likelihood you believe that he is armed.
Or somebody or something. Yes, I do.
Well, I would imagine it's him because if somebody else is armed, there's no need to point a weapon at him.
Correct. He was the only one right there in that immediate area.
So the individual that you point your weapon at and then handcuff because you believe is armed is prone out on the ground and he's never searched.
Okay. That's
correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. In the conversation that followed, now he's handcuffed. He makes an attempt to get up. He sits back down. Do you believe you made any effort to de-escalate that situation?
It was difficult for me to initially try to further de-escalate when he was continually yelling and screaming at me back.
I haven't done anything.
You don't
Why am
wanna
I in
listen.
handcuffs? I don't care. You're not my
being
mom.
silly because I'm
You're not my
coming here
dad.
for a gun.
That's fine. I don't have a gun. I haven't committed a crime.
And when I told you to keep your hands out of your pockets,
You're
you
not
did it.
I didn't commit a crime. You don't get to tell me what to do.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. Why are you yelling at me?
Because I have every
Who
right
are
to right
you?
now.
What's your badge number?
321 Guerrero, Guerriri. Make sure you spell it right.
If you're this scared of a guy in a
I've been here
swimsuit,
for 20 years.
At that same time, and I watched my video back over again and again and again because it was at this point I was not feeling well, I was not feeling right, I was experiencing
11 seconds of audio was removed here. Bethany is likely referring to her medical emergency that happened while she was on scene, which required her transportation to the hospital in an ambulance. Note that medical conditions can happen at any time, but in the IA report, Officer Strzelecki said that he and Bethany were joking around before the call, describing her as jovial and calm before arriving, and that she only became agitated from Ryan's verbal prodding. Sergeant Glass would later describe her as tight, like an overload of adrenaline was in her system, and that she seemed like it was beyond her control, and described her demeanor as clearly mad or angry.
still trying to maintain him. I got him yelling at me, I got other people arriving, and you know, I'm not myself at that moment. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, what is happening to me? How do I, you know, verbalize this, that I'm having an issue, that this guy is still yelling and screaming. I'm still trying to maintain a level of control. There was a lot for me at that moment going on.
You recall the things he was yelling?
Just like, I don't have to listen to you. You're not my mom.
You don't
Why am
wanna
I in
listen.
handcuffs? I don't care. You're not my
being
mom.
silly because I'm
You're not
coming
my
here
dad.
for a gun.
You know, I didn't do anything wrong. I just remember a few times, I don't have to listen to you. What am I under arrest for? And I initially explained that he was being detained. Mm-hmm. But the further, you know, I was being met with the resistance, he met the statute for resisting. Again, because I couldn't even get to the point of trying to identify who he was because the verbal aggression just continued.
Once he was handcuffed and on the ground, or on the ground and then handcuffed, had he been searched and no weapon found, how would that have changed the outcome of that interaction?
I'm not 100% sure because I still have an unknown with that item over there by the parking stop thing, you know. And I understand it's not physically on his person if it could be there, but it's still relevantly close.
So who checked that item out?
I don't even know or remember.
Did you direct anybody to check that item out?
I don't think I did.
So that item was one of the things that you mentioned was of concern to you, that it was just potentially a safety issue for you and whoever else might be around there. And again, it's a safety issue because you don't know who this guy is, and he could be armed, and you don't know what's in that item. So he's handcuffed, he's never searched, and nobody checks that item. And he's yelling, "I did nothing wrong, I'm not the one with the gun," and clearly agitated because he's in handcuffs, right? But at no point does anybody say, "Let's check that item, let's check him to see if he has a weapon, and let's figure out exactly why this guy is so pissed that he's handcuffed, alleging he did nothing wrong," right?
That's fair, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, when you're talking to Sergeant Glass, you had told him that after Gould took the phone from his pocket, he went back into his pockets. And he asked, where am I going to put a gun on a bathing suit? Now, you're paraphrasing, obviously. Don't expect that you're quoting the guy verbatim. It's the gist of it. And then went to reach back into his pockets. And you said, this part is verbatim. So obviously he's amped up on something. But when, like, the first couple times he didn't want to listen to me about keeping his hands out of his pockets and thought it was funny, I drew down on him. Right? Mm-hmm. So you've seen the BWC footage. Mm-hmm. Is that still accurate?
So, again, being in that heightened state that I was, for me at that moment, it was the truth. Can visions and absolute truth be skewed a little bit because of a heightened state of stress or a situation like that? Yes. And that's where I was at.
84302 is what he was ultimately charged with, resisting an officer without violence. The statute states whoever shall resist, obstruct, or oppose any officer in the lawful execution of any legal duty without violence is guilty of a misdemeanor. Resist, obstruct, or oppose. Now, I know you had left the scene. You fell ill and left, and this was all relayed then to Officer Strzelecki. Mm-hmm. But obviously you had made a decision at some point to charge him, to charge Mr. Gould with resisting.
I did.
And the resisting, obstructing, or opposing, tell me which part of the interaction you felt satisfied that.
By the second time, I had to tell him to keep his hands out of his pockets on a potential firearm call, and I don't know who he is yet.
Okay, when was the second time you told him?
When he had drawn out the phone and I had drawn down at the same time, because after the first time of time, so I consider that to be the second time.
I'm not the one with the gun.
Sir, keep your hands out of your pockets. Put the
Relax.
phone
I
down.
haven't done a crime. Don't talk to me like that.
Listen to me. I don't know you.
Listen,
you can put that
I don't
down.
know you. You're the one with the gun. Why
Get down on the ground now. Get down on the ground.
This?
But you gave him a second warning, not because he reached back into his pockets after taking the phone out.
Listen, I don't know you.
He never made a second attempt. After he took the phone out, he never went back into his pockets. He never reached for his pockets.
No, but he went back in to get the phone after the first time. I
After
told
the
him
first time.
not to do that.
Right. So let's clarify that then. You gave him a warning not to put his hands in his pockets, which he took his phone out.
I gave him a command to keep his hands out of his pockets because
Right.
I saw them here. I saw them drop and go here. That is a verbal command,
Right.
to which he did not listen to the first time.
And
So-
agreed. He took his phone out of his pocket after you told him that. After that, he never made an attempt to go back into his pockets. When you drew your weapon on him and ordered him to the ground, he went to the ground.
Correct.
And he was handcuffed. So the basis for the arrest for 84302 was him reaching for his phone after you told him not to.
I don't know what that was until it was
Understood.
produced.
That's understood. I'm asking. But that's the basis for the arrest for 84302.
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward to the comments that we discussed, right? Mocking his toenails, calling him a punk, etc. Would you agree that that is not professional behavior?
I would agree, yes. I'm not going to dispute that at all.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything I failed to ask you that you would like to add to the statement?
Could I?
Absolutely, you
Something?
can.
Obviously, I had reviewed thoroughly everything that was presented to me, to include listening to the statements that were provided by Sergeant Glass, Sergeant Beeth, Officer Strzelecki, and Officer Valerio. I had taken note in Sergeant Beeth's statement that he had come to the hospital several hours after I had been there, and it was already...
The rest of the interview has various redactions. Up to today, they have refused to produce a single record for me. This audio was obtained by Solo Yacker, and the written report was given to me by a reporter with the Palm Beach Post, Miss Hannah Phillips. The videos are from Ryan and other sources. I have since sent a final request for all records, and if they are not released, I will pursue civil action against the agency. However, from the report, Sergeant Beith met Brittany at the hospital, where she asked who took Ryan to jail. She was told that Officer Strzelecki did, and replied, "Good. That guy needed to go to jail." But Sergeant Beith told her, no, he didn't, and that he had taken Ryan home. It then appears that Bethany was told how much trouble she was in because of this ridiculous incident.
I couldn't help but notice when he was talking about the potential discipline that I could be sustaining from this incident. He had also taken the opportunity to let me know that Mr. Gould had been unarrested. I was not aware of that, and I was surprised when he was making the statement that he was speaking to me in the hospital about those issues, or what I consider to be a sensitive matter, especially when it's concerning discipline in a public emergency room. There was 2 other officers and my spouse there while he was saying these things.
The audio is redacted again.
To listen to potential disciplinary actions that are going to be taken against me in front of her and 2 other officers, to include the woman who was to my left with a curtain drawn, who recognized his voice and called out his name, Dennis, was enough for me to know that that is able to be heard by everybody there that was there. So when I did ask him, as my supervisor and someone I've known for 20 years, what's going to happen, what's going on, I found it disheartening to hear him laugh. That after I did get out of the hospital several days later, that it was funny to him why I was asking him that AC Bechtel was calling for me. I had no idea at that point, and there's a time and a place for everything. We all know that. Could I have picked a better time and a place for my interaction with Mr. Gould? Absolutely. I own that. However, there was a time and a place to discuss something like that, and that wasn't the time.
Okay.
I had been humiliated in front of my spouse and 2 other officers by my supervisor, someone I've known for 20 years.
Note that it appears that Bethany is crying because Sergeant Beith told her how she may be disciplined, but just moments before, she also told the investigator this.
So when I did ask him, as my supervisor and someone I've known for 20 years, what's going to happen, what's going on?
It sounds like she asked and he answered, but didn't like how he answered and is trying to use it to her advantage. To be fair, we don't know because we weren't there, and because the department redacted this portion of the interview, which now continues.
It's just disheartening to hear how funny that was to him. Sorry.
No, take a minute, take as much time as you need, and you tell me if you'd like to keep talking or if you want me to proceed.
Same thing with Sergeant Glass. I was really... It hurt to hear him speak because I consider myself a trusted part of that team. I'm a senior officer who they put a lot of responsibility on. Whenever we have a new officer come out, it is not abnormal for them to put that person in my zone, to look after them, to take care of them, to guide them. I cannot tell you the amount of times I made OIC because I'm one of the most senior and trustworthy people on that shift, and they know that. So When I eventually was able to get into that clubhouse and sit down because I'm still having this excruciating pain
The audio is redacted yet again.
her life, and this is the first interaction she's having with him, and had to ask him to leave. And there was certain points throughout there he was demanding her to look at him. She's now crying because she sees me upset, and he's demanding her to look at him. And feeling intimidated, she did just that, because where is she gonna go? Again, there is a time and a place, and that was not it. And I'm gonna just say it, but if I was married to a man, would Sergeant Beath have demanded my husband to look at him? This is a woman that day.
A final redaction, and upon returning, her union rep steps up to ask a couple of leading questions.
And take what's mine. I've never not.
I have one last question, but I don't want to cut you off either. If there's anything you want to express before I go to that.
It's okay.
Okay. Is there anything I failed to ask you that is pertinent to this investigation and should be brought out?
No, sir.
Okay. Then that is the end of the interview and the time.
I just have a few questions.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sergeant Grossman asked you that the basis for the resisting without violence you talked about. You already got into it. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that, but also one of the bases was the fact that the underlying call was an ag assault firearm, correct?
Yes.
So you had that knowledge when you were arriving on scene. And so you've already testified to this multiple times, but you get there and he already didn't follow your initial lawful command, right? Which was don't go in your pockets.
Yes.
He then reached in his pocket, took something out, which turns out was your phone. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. You've never met this guy before?
Never.
You don't know what he's capable of?
I do not.
You have no idea what's perhaps in his other pocket?
I don't.
Okay. Ultimately, you did the best you could with the information you had at the time, right?
Yes.
All right. I have any other questions?
We want to clarify, though, that the call was not an aggravated assault. It was a disturbance, and it was mentioned that one individual lifted up his shirt and showed the firearm.
Well,
that's fine, but in your head, knowing that
there's a gun on the scene.
There's a firearm on the scene.
Okay.
Someone's calling because someone showed a firearm. All right.
Okay. And that is the end of the interview. The time is 9:51.
That interview concludes, and as we know now, Bethany was fired. There's still so much more to this story, but I remain at the whim of Palm Beach Gardens police, though I was the first one to break the story, and second only to Ryan to ask for the records. I still have received nothing. I'll let you know what happens next, but just in case PBGPD continues to unlawfully refuse the release of these records to me, be sure to check out Solo Yakker's channel and some of Hannah Phillips' work at the Palm Beach Post. I removed some portions of this interview, but Solo Yakker is posting the entire video. His channel, as well as Hannah's and Ryan's, will all be linked below.